Hey VC, it's Dave here. I thought I'd jump on here and do a entry into Rob's contest, who goes by the name of Sound Strange. Really enjoyed Rob's videos, and although I've been a classical fan for quite a while, I never, I don't have an overabundance of it, and I've never really delved too much into the composers and that type thing. So it's been real interesting to hear Rob's chats about different composers, and particularly the stuff on the modernist composers. I have a lot of Bach and Beethoven and stuff like that, but I don't have a lot of the more modern composers, so that's been real interesting, as well as his Blue Note series and the Acora series that he's been doing on world music. And so yeah, anyway, he has a contest on the 600 subscribers that he has now, and he asked a few questions, and I thought I'd just contribute something. I'm not going to probably know all the answers to these questions, but I'll answer what I have. And the first one, it says a literary connection, and I picked this album, which is Mad River's Paradise Bar and Grill. It was their second album, and I looked for this album for a long time and could never find it. And the reason I was real curious about it was that Richard Brautigan recites some of his poetry on it. And way back in the day, I was a pretty big Richard Brautigan fan. And he doesn't say it's not poetry and music combined. He does say some poetry on it. But anyway, this is what he looks like. This is a book of his poems. And he was kind of like I guess you'd say, free spirit or hippie poet and writer back in the day. I don't know that he's that well known these days, but here's another one. This is Trout Fishing in America, which was real big back in the late 60s, and it's one of his novels about him talking about going trout fishing in America. And his writings were real gentle in a way, and contained a lot of traveling in them. He has a book of poems where I think he went over into Tokyo and wrote that book, which I've got. I forgot to pull it, but yeah, his writing style was real varied, and was real curious about that record by Mad River. Although I'm glad I got it and that I found it. It took me a long time to find it. I still prefer Mad River's first album really over this one. This one is more acoustic in a lot of ways, and I don't know, it's real different and varied in the way that they did their music on it. The first one is more electric and more of a San Francisco sound to it, something like Grateful Dead or something like that. But anyway, Richard Brautigan. And then he said, show a album cover with an artistic connection. I picked this one. It's always one of my favorite covers. I used to have a display behind my stereo in my other house before I moved, and I always would display this one. This is Doc at the radar station, Captain Beefheart and Company. And although I like Captain Beefheart's and his Magic Band, I almost prefer his artwork to the music that they made. Now, I do have a lot of his albums, so I can appreciate what they did. Here's another one that I really like. It's this one here. This is Shiny Beast. And on the back is a Looks like he did that on the back of a envelope of some sort. But I like how he did this one, and it looks like he took a squeegee or something and just went down with it and squeegeed out this part over here. But I really enjoy musicians that also are artists as well, like Joni Mitchell, and there's some other ones. I think their artwork kind of adds a dimension to their music. But this isn't my favorite Beefheart albums. I'm kind of more, when listening to Beefheart, I'm kind of more of a, I like his more commercial stuff, like Clear Spot. Actually, I like that one, and maybe his first one, but Best. But I was happy to find anything I could by him, and yeah, I believe there's a book, on his art if it's not out of print. But I really enjoyed his art. He's shown in a lot of galleries, and I can really appreciate his. I'd say it's abstract expressionism, but however you want to describe it, I really like his artwork. Let's see. He says show a historical connection. Okay. I'd say this one here. This is Bob Dylan's John Wesley Harding, and I thought I had this on album. I know I did it one time, but maybe I gave that album to a friend of mine once I got the CD. And I always liked this album here. Actually, this was the first album that I ever bought by Bob Dylan, and then I went back and bought some of his older vinyl, and then started buying it, forward with Nashville Skyline and that type thing. But interesting. I always wondered what, who these people were. I thought they were maybe band members or people he was hanging out with at the time. But I believe I read that they were just itinerant people he was around at the time of the photo shoot. And also on the title, he spelled Harding Harding, which actually I bought this book, excuse me, by James Reasoner, and on the lyrics he says John Wesley Harding was a friend to the poor. He traveled with a gun in every hand. He talks about him never shooting a good man down or something like that, although that wasn't true. And from what I've read about Dylan and that song, he says that he mostly just picked John Wesley Harding because it kind of went well with the song. So I guess you could say that's artistic license. And he wrote the song pretty quickly, actually, for as good as it is. And he sort of misspelled the spelling on that by putting the G on the end of it, because John Wesley Harding, the actual gunslinger, didn't have a G on the end of his name. And I picked up this book that talks a little bit about Western heroes and outlaws and such like that. And it talks a little bit about John Wesley Harding in here. Let's see if I can find the... Yeah, this is a picture of him right here. And he was actually quite a gunslinger. By the time he was like, I don't know, probably around 27, 28, he'd already killed like, 20 or so men, like 25 men or something like that. And most of them were outlaws and sort of cutthroats. But a lot of them were just kind of like people that supposedly he had a quick temper, and actually he was raised by, of course, by his mother and father here in Texas, and his father was a Methodist preacher, and wanted John Wesley to grow up to be a preacher, although he didn't take that route. He went quite the opposite, and his choices in life kind of led him into sort of a criminal activity, although he kind of went back and forth. I mean, he was also a lawman at certain times in his lifetime, but he would always like do something, I guess you might say, stupid, and it would have him give him run-ins with the law, and things traveled pretty fast back then, even in the Old West, and the names of the notorious would spread pretty rapidly, and so you had sheriffs that knew him and were aware of him, and when they would meet him in a bar, they would maybe not challenge him, but they were aware of him. I know he met Buffalo Bill Cody, I believe, no, it's Wild Bill Hickok, in a bar, one of the famous sheriffs back then. And they kind of became not good friends, but at least they didn't try shooting each other. But yeah, real interesting book about some of the outlaws back then, like various ones. So Jesse James and so forth like that. So yeah, an album that had a historical connection. Then he says, show an album not sung in English. And I have two here. This is Ruben Blades, Essays del Solar. And Ruben Blades comes from down around the Panama region, and sings in Spanish or Latin, and at any rate, this album is sort of like orchestrated. It's a real pleasant album, not in English, but it's still a nice album to listen to. And so yeah, he's also acted in some films. I forget all the films that he's been in, but he's had a pretty nice varied career in addition to being a musician. So yeah, Ruben Blades. Here's another one, Flaco Jimenez. Flaco's played on various albums. Here's one. This is Peter Rowan's first album, I believe. He played accordion on that album. He's played on Ry Cooder's various albums. He's played with Doug Sahm, and there's a picture of him right there with the accordion. But Flaco, I believe he's from Mexico, if I'm not mistaken, unless he was born here in the States. I forget. I kind of read something on him, but I tend to forget that stuff. And I love the cover here. This cover reminds me of a Mexican food joint, a restaurant that I used to go to occasionally there when I lived in West Texas. And it had this sort of decor here. You'd walk into that restaurant and you'd be in like a different world. And it had kind of like a large paintings like this on the walls. And theirs had like a sort of a seascape scenes in parts of it. It had like a large swordfish on the wall that was coming up out of part of the water and everything. But yeah, this album is sung in Spanish, and it's on the Joey label. But this music is very typical of south of the border music. If you were to driving around and you hear most of the days, probably Hispanic and Latino kids are playing, Spanish rap and everything like that these days. But this is more like your border town music with your typical guitar, accordion, and that type thing. Guitar, bass, accordion. but fairly joyous music in its own way. And so Flaco Jimenez. Okay, let's see, a record that taught you something. Well, let's see. I don't know if this is the best example of it, but this is Everybody Digs Bill Evans, and pianist that had his own problems with drug abuse and all that type thing. But back when I was buying, a few of these jazz albums, I think I bought this when oh golly, I forget the name of it. Big music store in Austin there was on the south side of the river, and I want to say Endless Horizons, but that's the one that was in Odessa. Anyway, when they first opened up, they were on the south side of the river, and now they've moved up to the north side there, and they're one of the main music stores there in Austin. And when I was looking around, they had little placards, and I think they still do have that. Have those little placards under, like the albums, would be a little bit of write-up about various albums. And this is on the Riverside label, and I was real curious about jazz and was starting to expand some of my, interest in other genres and everything. And this is actually a really good album. And when I was looking around, I found this book here. And this is all about various jazz labels. Talks about Riverside, Prestige, Galaxy, Pablo, Milestone, and some of the other jazz labels that I guess came all under this Original Jazz Classics banner. But yeah, it had nice write-ups, and we talk about the various different musicians, and had write-ups by critics, and we'd show their album covers, and then we'd have little ratings, which I guess they got some of these out of Downbeat magazine, and had some of the writers back then talk about some of these things. But it was a real interesting little booklet that helped me to discover, some of these various more or less classic musicians. I think of them as being classic jazz artists. It was kind of my gateway into jazz in a lot of ways. This is the one on Bill Evans, later picture of him there. And it had this particular album in it right here. Had a write-up on it as well. Let's see, I think they gave this 4.5 stars, and this other one, which I also have, was 5 stars. I'd give them both 5 stars if it was me. In fact, nearly everything in this book is a 5-star album as far as I'm concerned. There's some on Miles Davis. But at any rate, the book really helped me discover a lot of jazz, which was exactly what I was looking for back then. And so yeah, it was very instrumental in doing that. Okay, let's see here. The bonus is, well, I'm mostly doing this for grins, and so I'm gonna just answer a couple of these. I have no idea really about a lot of them. And so Rob says, what is my favorite film and soundtrack? That's kind of a guess, but this is one of my favorite films, and I don't have the soundtrack, but I always liked the music on 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I know it's got Ligeti on here along with some Strauss. Now, I'm not too big of a Strauss fan, but for what they used to do in the soundtrack is fine. But Stanley Kubrick was really good about finding the right music to fit his films, and man, what a director, really. But you know, there are a lot of good film directors. But yeah, I mean, like for 1968, this film was really a head trip, and it still is for today if you've never seen the film before. But particularly, I was always a science fiction fan. So yeah, wonderful movie and soundtrack. See, 2 albums from the month and year he was born. Now that one I don't know. I'm guessing Rob was born around 75, but that's just a total guesstimate. I have a friend that I used to know in Odessa that is around Rob's age, and well, actually he was from Midland, but they're sort of like twin cities. And I think Billy is around 45, 46, something like that. So I can, you know, I've always been able to relate to younger people. And I met Billy. Used to go to a comic book store, and he'd be in there, and we started chatting, you know, and Billy's really into movies and art and all kind of things. Really pretty smart guy. And we sort of had a connection, you know, due to all the art and everything that we enjoyed. So let's see, main inspiration for playing guitar. Well, he says two composers he owns the most of. Now, I've seen a lot of Rob's classical videos, and what I do with those albums. Oh, here they are. I'm going to just make a guess and go with these. The Schoenbergs. He said they both had, I think he said they both started with S's, if I'm not mistaken. This is Schoenberg's Quartet, which is by the Juilliard String Quartet. Real nice album of that. And then the other one is Stravinsky. This is his Petrushka with the new Philharmonic Orchestra. Both these are real nice albums. And I've always liked this album cover here too. But yeah, total guesstimate on my part. Talks a little bit about album notes, talk about the music inside. So Schoenberg and Stravinsky. And then he says main inspiration for playing guitar. I'm going to go with, you know, from what he played on his video. Now I'm not going to know any of the tunes or whatever, but that would be a total wild guess for me. But as far as the way the music sounded on there, it kind of sounded like something like Neil Young or Bert Yance. And I know Bert Yance was also a big influence on Neil Young's music. And this is the essential Bert Yance, Strolling Down the Highway, on the Transatlantic CD label. But as far as maybe an influence, I'm going to say Bert Yance. I know Rob has talked about Phil Lynott that played with Thin Lizzy, but Phil mostly played bass, and so I don't think it's him. And none of the things that he played sounded like you know, Neil Young. I mean, I couldn't recognize any of the songs as being from Neil Young, but the playing on it kind of sounded like Neil Young. So yeah, I'm going to go with this album here, or Bert Yance. And then the 5 tunes, that would just totally be a guess by me. I will say that the second tune, I thought maybe if I could find a tune on there that I knew, then I could kind of like back engineer it and you know, figure out, you know, maybe some of the others. But I really couldn't figure out a definite on any song. I will say that the second song, the way that the chord structure is, really reminded me of Chicago song, Wishing You Were Here, done on an acoustic guitar. So it has that same chord progression, but as far as it being, you know, those being Chicago songs, I find that highly doubtful. But good playing. I enjoyed it, Rob. So that's my contribution for as little that it is, and I hope you have more entries into your contest. I've enjoyed your channel for the years you've been on the VC. Always something interesting. I've always been real curious what you did for a living, and I'm going to guess that as being some sort of school teacher, the way you your vast knowledge and everything, and the way your presentations or everything is always really very good, and you seem to have a great deal of knowledge on a lot of different subjects. So perhaps you're a school teacher. That would be my guess. But anyway, that's my entry to your, I believe it's 600 subs, and I'll leave a link to Rob's channel below on my in the descriptions, and hope you have a lot more entries, Rob. Enjoyed it. So we'll talk to y'all later. Bye bye.